Jezebel, the emblematic princess Phoenician, eternalized her name with acts of extreme wickedness and manipulation. His trajectory in the kingdom of Israel left indelible marks, boosting a culture of idolatry and spiritual corruption. With an insight that bordered on cunning, she established apostasy and pagan worship practices. His influential political marriage served as the foundation for domination that surpassed the limits of justice. Known for his coldness, Jezebel executed orders without remorse, even brutally eliminating innocents. His inhuman acts revealed a corrupted heart, marked by apostasy and unbridled idolatry. The pressure on the people, coupled with religious persecution, instigated the adoption of pagan worship in an overwhelming way. This merciless stance showed how spiritual corruption could infiltrate the structures of power. The figure of Jezebel shocked the inhabitants of the Kingdom of Israel, challenging the customs and morals in force. Its Phoenician influence, coupled with relentless methods, inaugurated an era of uncertainties and disorder. With tactics permeated by false accusations, she manipulated scenarios in which justice was distorted. Even in the midst of the growing idolatry, his presence remained an unmistakable sign of decay and evil. In acting with absolute cruelty, Jezebel demonstrated that power could be perverted towards perdition. Its trajectory is an alert on the corrupt influence of pagan worship and devastating apostasy. The echoes of their acts resonate as lessons of how spiritual corruption contaminates power relations. For those seeking to understand the risks of distorted faith, Jezebel remains an eternal example of evil. Jezebel joined King Ahab into a political marriage that transformed the scenario of the Kingdom of Israel. The alliance, marked by the Phoenician influence, was the gateway to a new era of pagan practices. The strategic union set up a climate where idolatry and apostasy began to dominate the hearts. With this bond, the nation was gradually seduced by a pagan worship that dismissed true faith. In this union, Jezebel's persuasion was crucial to reorient the king's priorities. She convinced she ended up building temples dedicated to Baal and Assyria, reinforcing idolatry on the throne. Her influence caused a radical change in the rituals and customs of the people. Thus, the Kingdom of Israel was immersed in a pagan worship practice that challenged divine precepts. The introduction of these practices brought with it an apostasy climate that shook spiritual structures. The spread of idolatry has created an environment conducive to spiritual corruption and moral degradation. The effects of this influence were felt not only on politics but on the essence of the faith of the people. The episode demonstrated how seduction by power and influence can divert a nation from its original values. Even in the midst of the prophet's resistance and alerts, the seed of idolatry was deeply rooted. The tension between ancient customs and new pagan practices has generated conflicts that have lasted over time. The coexistence between the tradition of David's dynasty and the deviations brought by this link highlighted the duality of power. Jezebel's legacy, impregnated in history, remains a living example of the consequences of a corrupt political marriage. In the heart of the Kingdom of Israel, the tension between genuine faith and idolatry reached alarming levels. Jezebel, ruthless in his religious persecution, eliminated prophets without hesitation. Among these stood out the brave prophet Elijah, who rose against the yoke of apostasy. His challenging posture inspired many to question the spiritual corruption established by pagan worship. In the epic scenario of Mount Carmel, Elias confronted the priests of Baal and will be firmly. He has demonstrated, in a practical and surprising way, that true faith surpasses every form of idolatry. Upon seeing divine power manifest, hope was reborn to the oppressed of the Kingdom of Israel. For those who want to understand and apply this lesson, I recommend reading works that deepen the life of the prophet Elijah. The confrontation was not just a physical clash, but a spiritual milestone that echoes to this day. Elijah's victory over false prophets showed the dangers of distorted faith and pagan practices. This battle, marked by courage and divine revelation, serves as an example for all of us. It is a living lesson on how truth and justice can prevail even in the face of persecution and apostasy. Elijah's episode and false prophets reinforces the importance of resisting the corrupt influence. Elijah's prophecy, which foreshadowed the fall of those who promoted idolatry, echoes hard by times. Each generation can be inspired by this example to face challenges with faith and determination. May the memory of this confrontation motivate the search for an inner transformation, driving away every form of spiritual corruption. Jezebel, with cunning and cruelty, devised the fall of Naboth, a righteous and just man. Using a false accusation, he distorted the truth to hide his interests. In exploring political marriage, he paved the way to appropriate Naboth's vineyard. This plot reveals how deep spiritual corruption may be when power is distorted. The episode involving Naboth exposes the wickedness that plagued the kingdom of Israel. The false accusation was the trigger of a meticulous plan that benefited King Ahab. With a phenomenal influence and the promotion of pagan worship, his acts have been lined with impunity. Religious persecution and manipulation intertwined, eroding the foundations of justice. Every detail of the conspiracy shows the articulation of a policy of murder and mistake. The ambition and thirst for power led the plot, affecting the faith and values of the people. The dishonorable Naboth vineyard symbolized the breaking of the precepts of the David dynasty. The episode became a milestone of injustice and a warning against spiritual corruption. The tragic case of the Naboth vineyard echoes as a reminder of the dangers of political manipulation. Jezebel has shown that when pagan worship and religious persecution prevail, the kingdom crumbles. Their relentless acts are an example to reflect on the risks of the false accusation. For those who seek justice and truth, this story inspires a profound review of values. At the height of his corruption empire, Jezebel's death marked the end of an era of disorder in the kingdom of Israel. Since the times of religious persecution, its trajectory has been permeated by the Phoenician influence and the dissemination of pagan worship. Elijah's prophecy, which warned of the fate of those who embraced apostasy, announced a tragic and inevitable outcome. Each act of manipulation, from political marriage to King Ahab to false accusations against Naboth, sealed his dark destiny. The climax of its history occurred when Jezebel was brutally expelled from a palace, in an act that shocked everyone. Horse traffic on his body symbolized the violence of divine justice, imprinting an unusual end. Soon after, dogs devoured Jezebel, accurately fulfilling Elijah's prophecy and punishing his spiritual corruption. This emblematic episode shows that abuse of power and pagan worship cannot escape divine retribution. Jezebel's tragic death serves as a warning for leaders who, with idolatry practices and false accusations, run the faith of the people. Thus, many are lost when trying to support empires based on apostasy and religious persecution. The lesson is clear: spiritual corruption and political manipulation have inevitable consequences, even reaching kings of Israel and Judah. Get inspired by this story to seek integrity, using edifying readings like Who Thinks enriches to rethink their values. The violent end of Jezebel, sealed by Elijah's prophecy, reaffirms that moral deviation never remains unpunished. His destiny, marked by a cruel death, shows that the path of apostasy and pagan worship leads to a tragic end. Even with the power of political marriage and the influence it had, the truth irreversibly turned out. This impactful account reminds us that divine justice is relentless and that even the queen of spiritual corruption will find her fall. Even after Jezebel's death, marked by the tragic episode in which dogs devoured Jezebel, his legacy was not extinguished. Elijah's prophecy continued to echo, remembering that spiritual corruption goes beyond the end of a reign. The shadow of idolatry and pagan worship instituted under its influence persisted in the kingdom of Israel. This atmosphere of apostasy made it clear that immorality, once sown, germinates for generations. The union for political marriage between Jezebel and King Ahab solidified an alliance permeated by the phenomenal influence. Such a covenant boosted the dissemination of practices that exalted Baal and Asherah, deepening idolatry. The spread of apostasy, coupled with intense religious persecution, irreversibly altered the direction of the kingdom of Israel. In each ritual and erected temple, the mark of pagan worship resembled the price of spiritual corruption. Jezebel's negative legacy has reached levels so deep that it almost compromised the continuity of David's dynasty. Many historians claim that their influence even threatened the lineage of the kings of Israel and Judah. The memory of the false accusation against Naboth and the usurpation of Naboth vineyards remains a symbol of the injustices of that time. Each episode echoes as a warning about the dangers of allowing spiritual corruption to be rooted in power. Even over the centuries, The scars left by their trajectory serve as a lesson for all generations. The teachings of the prophet Elijah, who dared to confront the abuses of pagan worship, continue to inspire the fight against apostasy. The complex plot that involved political marriages, false accusations, and religious persecution reveals the persistence of corruption. May this reflection motivate a constant search for inner renewal and vigilance against practices that threaten faith. By reflecting on Jezebel's trajectory and his actions, we are invited to examine our own walk. The narrated story, full of manipulation and idolatry, encourages the search for authentic faith. Have you ever wondered how spiritual corruption can infiltrate even the most solid institutions? May this journey serve as a warning to rethink our daily values and attitudes. The narrative that runs through the kingdom of Israel, marked by political marriages and religious persecution, reveals the urgency of change. Each episode, from the false accusation against Naboth to Elijah's prophecy, urges us to question what is the price of our own integrity. The legacy of an age of pagan worship and apostasy challenges us to rescue the essence of true faith. May this reflection be the starting point to turn our lives from the inside out. It is time to transform knowledge into action, seek to understand past mistakes to build a wider future. Ask yourself, how can I apply these lessons to overcome negative influence on my life? Jezebel's story teaches us that even in the face of corruption and idolatry, there is always room for redemption. Allow yourself to question, learn, and act, rescuing values that promote justice and integrity. I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so as not to lose more content that inspires personal transformation. Let this narrative be the impulse necessary for a journey of self-knowledge and spiritual renewal. Share your reflections and encourage others to embark on this walk towards a fuller life. Are you ready to act and transform your reality based on these powerful lessons?